The third element of the state is sovereignty. It has its common description that it is supreme and uncontrollable. It's inherent in the state. And in relation to who possesses sovereignty, it is ascribed to the people in a democratic state. No? It is the supreme power by which thus any citizen is governed and is the person or body of persons in the state to whom there is politically no superior. No? We look at this definition and we have a sense that this refers to um, the exercise of the state of its inherent powers of taxation, eminent domain, and police power, and its capacity to enter into relations with other states as they are co-equals. If you look at this concept of sovereignty, once the state completes itself with its possession of sovereignty, it is its ticket to the admission to the international arena. Okay? It results to or is manifested from the following. No? They are entitled to political independence, meaning no intrusion of their affairs will be allowed by or from other states. They enter into agreements with other states, um, political relations, foreign affairs, um, foreign relations with other states is already possible because of this possession of sovereignty. Of course, state immunity, and of course, territorial integrity. A state then has exclusive control and jurisdiction over its territory. If we look at the concept of earned sovereignty in political science, earned sovereignty is that concept where there is the growing, there is the process of giving birth to a state by a sub-state inside a mother state, but because it eventually possesses all the characteristics of a state, it may enter into a negotiation with the mother state or is supported by an international body or community. So it may be allowed to get its independence as an independent and separate state. There are instances where a state or a sub-state does not actually become entitled to its independence as yet, no, its own sovereignty. And without its own sovereignty, it is subject to the control and assertion of the mother state. And other states do not have any capacity or not capacity, no reason to deal with it as yet because it is not yet a state. They may extend foreign assistance, but the the sub-state that has not yet attained its the level of statehood um, cannot assert itself in foreign relations with other states. And those who represent the sub-state that is not yet a state um, do not enjoy state immunity for their actions. So you have classifications of sovereignty. You have classifications as to its nature and extent. As to nature, it is legal sovereignty and political sovereignty. Legal sovereignty is the power to issue commands, and political sovereignty actually subsumes legal sovereignty, but it's broader because political sovereignty relates with the vastness of the power of the sovereign, including the power to govern, the power to enter into foreign relations, and the likes. No? Also, the power to enter to issue commands. No? As to extent, internal sovereignty and internal sovereignty and external sovereignty. Internal sovereignty is the power to control yeah, its domestic affairs, while external sovereignty is the power of the state to direct the relations, its relations with other states. Okay. This is the manifestation of independence. You have the concept of sovereignty in relation to dominium and imperium. Imperium, or the exercise of the state of its sovereign authority, sovereign functions, is that aspect of sovereignty where it exerts or asserts its authority to govern. It performs acts which are exclusive to it, no? Like the passing of laws, um, securing its territory, maintaining peace and order, okay, defending the same from invasion. No? But it also is a power of imperium when there are certain powers that um, include it performs that only government does. Um, this includes the power to uh, perform certain regulations, including inspection for sanitary purposes, animal control, uh, and then the likes. No, this refers to the delivery of public services that the state is expected to perform. Then you have also what you call the function of the state in dominium or its proprietarial functions. In the dominion power of the state, it enters into contracts with private or persons, no other persons or entities. It levels down itself to an ordinary person. It includes the acquisition of property or the disposition of the same. In the dominion power, um, or the exercise of its dominion authority in sovereignty, state performs powers that even private citizens can perform. So again, take note of the concept of auto limitation, Reagan versus Commissioner, that though we describe sovereignty as supreme and uncontrollable, the state by law, in our case by the Constitution, can restrict its otherwise overwhelming competence. So this concept of sovereign immunity, you know, in general, this is also known as the royal prerogative of dishonesty. This is the non-suability of the state. Uh, it grants the state the prerogative to defeat any legitimate claim against it by simply invoking non-suability. So the state can invoke non-suability against a citizen or against natural persons, but also the state can assert its non-suability as a state because that's one of the manifestations of statehood, no, being in the same category, par and parem, non habet imperium, in the same category as other states, being a co-equal with other states. In the international law, immunity is commonly understood as an exception to the state and its organs from judicial jurisdictions of other states because we are co-equals of each other. You recall the Montevideo Convention saying that in Article 4, states are politically equal, they enjoy the same rights and have equal capacity to their exercise. And continuing with Article 5, the fundamental rights of the states are not susceptible of being affected by, in any manner whatsoever. So, um, the state may not be sued without its consent. That is a concept that is included in the generally accepted principles of international law. In fact, there is even no need to write it in the Constitution because we adopt the generally accepted principles of international law as part of our laws. So even without such affirmation, we would still be bound by the generally accepted principles of international law and under the doctrine of incorporation. We recognize that states are co-equals of other states, but internally, the non-suability being a concept of general acceptance is also a principle that we can assert internally. That's why in Section 3 says that the state may not be sued without its consent. You have that in Section 3 of Article 16. This is based on the two theories. One, the positivist theory, that there can be no legal right as against the authority that makes the law on which that right depends. The spring cannot rise higher than the source. No? The sociological theory, on the other hand, is more practical because if all suits against the state are permitted by our law and there's no restriction, no leash on it, the state will be beleaguered by lawsuits. with the propensity of individuals to bring matters to the court, the state can no longer perform its task because it will just be facing court action. These are some of the supporting laws, no, on non-suability that supports the theory of non-suability on the concept of damnum absque injuria, that damage done or resulting from the legitimate exercise of a person's rights is a loss without injury. So if you suffer a loss because of a legitimate state authority, could be possible that there is no injury, although there is an actual loss or damage. So when is a suit against the state? The general rule, regardless of who is named the defendant, when it affects its covers its public treasury, because the treasury of the state affects the entire operation of the state. So that's the general rule, regardless of who is named as the defendant. If it has adverse effects to our treasury, that's a suit against the state. Public funds cannot be object of garnishment procedures. The functions and of public the functions and public service rendered by the state cannot be allowed to be paralyzed or disrupted by the diversion of public funds from their legitimate and specific objects as appropriated by law. Republic versus Villasor. So specifically, there are instances that would definitely direct us to the idea that the suit is against the state. For most, if the suit is if the action is against the republic by name, that's obvious. Second, if it's a suit against an unincorporated government agency, meaning a suit created by law. If the if the office is created, agency is created by law, it shares or it projects the non-suability of the state and enjoys the shares in the same protection. A suit against a government agency covered by a charter with respect to the agency's performance of its governmental functions. Meaning, okay, you take into consideration those which are incorporated, though not created by law, performs governmental functions, so in, use imperi, no? And a suit that as to its face is against a government officer, but the ultimate liability is with the government. Let's try to see some examples of this, or explanations of this. First is if it's these are the most complicated to understand, but well, there's no issue if it's a suit against the state. It's suing the republic by name. It's clear, no? But a suit against an incorporated agency, unincorporated government agencies have no personality of their own. No, they are adjuncts to the state itself. They enjoy the immunity from suit because it is invested with an inherent power of sovereignty because they are created by law. So they share in that same sovereignty. But okay, there's a mention in your jurisprudence of original charter. With original charter means government owned and controlled corporations. These are again referring to unincorporated, no, unincorporated entities, those which are created by law. Like in this case of professional video versus TESDA. TESDA, its main function is to educate the youth, no, or those who are out of school, to give them technical expertise. In this case of TESDA, they requested, or they have entered into a contract with a private entity for the production of PVC IDs. And the court said that could they be sued? Could TESDA be sued? TESDA said now that the fact that a non-corporate government entity performs a function proprietary in nature does not necessarily result in its being suable. If said governmental function is undertaken as an incident, like the issuance of IDs to students, to its governmental function, then there is no waiver thereby of the sovereign immunity from the suit, or from suit extended to such government entity. So, ATO versus Spouses Ramos, It says that the need to distinguish between an unincorporated government agency performing governmental functions and one performing proprietary functions uh, gives rise to certain distinctions on treatment, no? Um, um, because sometimes the government performs proprietary functions, not sovereign functions. Though it is unincorporated, if it performs proprietary functions, it may be sued. Remember that. So in relation to unincorporated government entities, no, and of suability, you have two theories, no, classical or absolute theory, and the newer or more restrictive theory, um, whereby even if acts are committed by the state itself, no, um, you, regardless of its being unincorporated or not, consider if their functions are proprietary or governmental or sovereign, governmental or proprietary. Because if it's proprietary, regardless of classification of the entity, unincorporated or otherwise, if it's proprietary, then they may be sued. A suit against a government officer performing official duties, um, Kalu versus CA, no? Um, Operatives of the DNR confiscated in a checkpoint illegal logs or logs taken from illegal logging, confiscated, and then they were subject of a civil suit, no? The Plevin and its consequences. They were made parties according to the Supreme Court. Do not sue our public servants because in that instance they were performing their functions legitimately. A suit against a public officer in his official acts is in effect a suit against the state, said the Supreme Court, if its purpose is to hold the state ultimately liable. However, the protection afforded to the public officers by this doctrine generally applies only to activities within the scope of the authority of their office, in good faith and without willfulness, malice, or corruption. So, public servants, when you perform your public functions, cannot be sued because you share in the non-suability of the state, except if you perform your function in bad faith or you have malice or corruption in mind. Okay. Case of Lansang versus General Assembly for the Blind. This case refers to the public servant who conned a representative of the Organization of the Blind to sign a document, no? That affected to their removal from their premises. Supreme Court said that the action of the public servant is not covered by this state immunity. The rule does not apply where the public official charged in his official capacity for acts which are unlawful or injurious to the rights of others. So how is consent to be sued? Because a state may be sued if it consents. How is the suit given or the consent given? It may be express, and that's the general rule. Express consent is none other than the consent through law or statute. No, no contract can override the discretion of Congress. The case of Republic versus Purisima, um, um, if um, if the representative of an agency waives the non-suability and consents to be sued, that is not binding to the state because generally it's only the state through its Congress, through law, that can waive or can consent to be sued. Note this case of Merit versus government, no, on the matter of a uh, special agent. If the actor performing the task is a public servant regularly performing his usual task, then the state is immune from suit, no? But not for acts of special agents. No? Okay. The other laws um, are here, examples of consent to be sued. Okay. quasi-delegates by special agents as well. So in this point, we have to distinguish between incorporated government control, incorporation of government owned and controlled corporations. When the government creates a corporation through the corporation code, not by law. Kapag corporation code, it creates an entity with a separate personality, a separate entity, which can be with the capacity to sue and be sued. It does not share in that immunity of the state. No? If the government entity is given the capacity to be sued, the suit encompasses any kind of action, including one from tort. NHA versus heirs of Gabilondo, saying that the funds of a GOCC, which is incorporated, is not exempt from garnishment. Therefore, because it has a separate cut, its appropriations is not cut from the appropriations law, but from law itself, then it's not exempt from garnishment because it's unincorporated. It's incorporated. No? Consent may also be implied. One of the examples where consent is implied is when the government enters into business contracts, because when the government enters into business contracts, it enters into similar to a private person. Okay. Okay. Example, this case of DepEd versus Onyate. DepEd entered into extended its consent to a donation of a property for the use as a campus, but subsequently the property's donation was contested, or the ownership of the property was contested. DepEd could be included in the suit because it consented to the contract, because you cannot the donation requires kasi acceptance, and by accepting the same, he becomes part of the contract. DepEd or DEX at the time. It would be inequitable for the state to invoke immunity when it causes injustice to the people. Okay, the state cannot invoke immunity. Or when you take private property for public use, expropriation, you can be sued for just compensation. The doctrine of government immunity from suit cannot serve as an instrument to perpetuate an injustice on a citizen. Okay. Unimex properties were confiscated, brought to the warehouse. Some of them were missing and some were damaged. The Bureau of Customs becomes liable because they have full control over the premises. No? It would be iniquitous for the state to claim exception from liability or to claim immunity for acts which have caused injustice here to the shipper or the destruction of his property by whatever reason inside the customs warehouse. Republic versus Spouses Manzano says that the doctrine of sovereign immunity does not apply when the state takes private property for public use without following the proper expropriation proceedings. So expropriation cases, the state is not immune from suit. Third one, when the government files a complaint, defendant may file a counterclaim against it. So counterclaim if by the private citizens, una-una din naman ang government to file a suit. So what is the scope of consent? Consent is only up to the point of judgment. It's only consent to be sued. Looking at these cases, you will have the notion that the consent to be sued is only up to that point of the trial procedure. But when a decision is already rendered, there is there's difficulty in executing a decision, because, for example, if it refers to the payment of damages by government, you need expropriations. You need an appropriations law for that, and appropriations for a year is already fixed, earmarked for certain purposes. So suability is not the same with liability. The state may consent to be sued, but in the end, it may not allow liability. So if under a charter, you have to look at the charter, no? If it's created by the corporation code, the GOCC. Because if it's the charter allows for a lawsuit, then sue him, sue the entity or the corporation. When the consent to be sued is provided in the charter, the consent does not stop with the rendition, in fact, of the judgment. It goes up to the level or the point of judgment or its execution. Thank you for viewing.